Hi again everyone, morning and welcome to the Global Reviews webinar for the tertiary education sector. Thanks to everyone who's joined today, been a good response. As I said earlier, my name is Darren Watson, I'm the Commercial Director for the education sector here. Today we'll be covering some high-level results that have come out of some recent research that we've done into the industry. We'll show you some examples of how universities are performing well as not so well at just some of the stages in the digital journey. Important to note that we're looking at the journey of a prospective student as they go through the process of sourcing a course and university to attend right through to the application stage. So while we've only got half an hour, it doesn't give us a lot of time to show you everything. So we're just going to show you some snippets and hope you get a good understanding of the research and how we can help your organisation. Webinar is going to be run by Norman Azabajic, who's our Principal Client Advisor for the education industry. Just quickly before I hand over to Norman, we've been working with the education sector for many years in terms of measuring and auditing sites based on their respective features and functions, but this is the first round of our expanded research where we've actually put prospective students through testing. So it's a real landmark research for Global Reviews and the industry. Just before I hand over to Norman, I also wanted to point out that there'll be some universities online today that weren't part of the original study or the study late last year. Don't worry, you'll still get a lot of insights out of today's session, but also importantly, we're happy to talk to you about being part of the research moving forward. So I've taken up a couple of minutes of Norman's time, so I'll hand over to him now. So enjoy the webinar.
Thanks very much, Darren, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. So we have half an hour this morning, and we'll do a quick snapshot of the digital customer experience for the higher learning sector. So what we'll cover today is just a few minutes around Global Reviews, who we are and how we go about the research. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, then we'll dive straight into some of the results, and then I'd love to answer a couple of questions at the end from the audience. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please do feed them through. So let's kick off and talk just very briefly about Global Reviews. So what do? We help marketing, sales and service leaders by providing measurement, benchmarking and ongoing optimization of the digital customer experience. And we hope that that results in a higher conversion of prospects to both consideration and ultimately purchase. So in your context, this would be prospective students. So we help understand who is winning customers who are in market for your product or service and why, as well as how easy it is to buy from you and your competitors, or how easy it is to engage with you online. And most importantly, what are the actions that you should be driving sustainable improvements with. In terms of how we structure our studies or our methodology, if you think of a customer journey which starts with awareness, then goes into a research stage, then a purchase or some sort of application stage, and then once they become a customer, it goes into a service component. We really organise it across three main modules, which we call marketing effectiveness. That covers, we call the discover and consider stages. So discover is how easy is it for customers to find you and how strong is your initial attraction. Then we get into the consider stage, which is how effectively do you engage customers and actually help them to match a product or a service to their needs. And then there is a bit of overlap between the consider stage and the act stage, which we call sales effectiveness, digital sales effectiveness, or DSC. Really, act stage is then getting into how easy is it to actually purchase the product or apply for that particular product with you. And then the last module is service effectiveness. That's how well do you service customers once they've converted from being prospects. So today we'll be focusing on the DSC component, and we'll be showing the results from that. And that's the first time, as Darren mentioned, that we've done that in the higher learning industry. So just very briefly, how we typically work with clients. So we run a syndicated research calendar Globally, we collect data on over 500 brands in more than 10 industries, and typically more than 40,000 in-market consumers annually. These are some of the brands that we work with, and once we collect the data, we after we do our validations, we then make that available to our clients through our data portal. So that's a self-service functionality, and clients can do some high-level analysis themselves. And obviously, our consulting team goes out to clients. Typically, we go and see clients 2 or 3 times a year, have workshops, and we really drill down into the detail and show them a lot of insight around what's happening, not only with their own experience, but with their competitors' experience, as well as other industries, which a lot of our clients find valuable. So let's kick off and just quickly, we'll talk about methodology, and then we'll dive into the results. So methodology, there are 4 key inputs into our studies. The first one, which is really important, is actual customer behavior. So we get people to perform tasks or scenarios on each of the sites that we look at, and we actually capture all of their browsing behavior. So that gives us success rates, it gives us efficiency, how long it takes them to complete these tasks, it gives us pathways, so we can assess navigation. That's a really important component. Next component or input is the customer attitudes. So we ask customers a bunch of survey questions, both pre as well as post interactions on the site, and that helps us assess things like satisfaction, customer expectations, their opinions about sites, so typical sort of customer attitudinal data. We also have a customer audit where we get customers to rate the importance of particular features and functionality, and that again gives us more insights around navigability, look and feel, and content of sites. And finally, and this is what we've done in the higher learning industry before, is the best practice audit. So we complete an audit on each site and basically say, is there functionality present that we believe should be there? So that's sort of a best practice audit over our 14 years of experience. So all of those inputs are put together, collated, we weight it, we have some proprietary algorithms to help us weight that data, and that's where we produce final results. And we will drill down into some of those results today. Just very quickly also on the sample sizes, so typically we will have at least 50 customers for each of our clients' sites, so we get 50 people to complete and rate each site. So obviously the total number within a particular study will depend on the number of clients that we have. So looking at the higher learning study, you can see here we've got about 20 providers that we captured in the last round, and that was run from the end of October to the early December of 2014. So that's what the results are from. And as Darren mentioned, this list is quite flexible, so we can certainly include other providers. So let's dive into some snapshot results and have a look at how that's all going. So as we said, we're going to focus on the sales effectiveness, or what we call digital sales effectiveness. So we're really going to be looking at how effectively do customers match their product and service to their needs, and then getting into the application stage. So just before we dive into the results, I felt it was important to just briefly highlight what the customer needs are when they are researching higher learning. So these are the top 10 customer needs from our survey. And to try to summarize those, it's really all about providing complete and sufficiently detailed information when they're looking for courses or looking for information. It's about making that information easy to understand and navigate, the ability to apply online, to support if there's a problem or a question, and to compare the different options. So they are sort of the key 5 themes that we're seeing from customers in your particular industry. So let's have a look at the results. So overall, if we compare the higher education industry across other industries, as you can see there, you're sitting at 55% at that aggregate high level. And that score puts you somewhere around the average or sort of high average across other industries. As you can see, the highest are the Australian savings and credit cards industries. They have about 60%. and the lowest is Australian energy retailers, who sit at about 43% ESE score overall. We'll drill down into this so that you understand what's happening. So let's look at each provider that we captured in the study. So there are 20 providers here, and as you can see, the average for the industry is 55%, but there is a little bit of variability there. Not a huge amount. We see in other industries, we see more variability. We do see quite a few of the providers here clustering around the average, so most of them are sitting somewhere between 50 and 60%, with a couple of exceptions higher and slightly lower as well. Another important point to make is just because the aggregate score is high, that doesn't mean that a provider is doing everything well, or that they are performing well on each stage of the customer experience. And in fact, if we look at, this is just a quick illustration. So this is across the 6 different stages. As you can see, some of these providers do quite well in one stage, but not so well in another. So that aggregate level score really needs to be broken down into each stage to understand what's happening. So we'll do that now, and we'll look at, as an industry, we've picked out 3 stages. So as we said, we have the consider phase and the act phase. We break those down into what we call 6 stages, and they are initial engagement, introducing options, evaluating options, facilitating decisions, all within the consider stage, and then we have channel selection and postgraduate application. And I'll explain what some of these mean, but that's the 6 stages that we look at in terms of the customer journey. So today we'll briefly touch on 3 of the stages. Introducing options first. It's a stage that the industry does fairly well on, 63%, and we'll look at 2 that the industry doesn't do so well on, so facilitating decisions and postgraduate application. So let's have a look at the consider stage, introducing options. One of the tasks that we asked people to conduct in this particular stage was to locate the course range. So a fairly simple task. We asked everyone to find a list or an area which displays all available courses for domestic undergraduates. And we, as I said earlier, we tracked all their behaviours as they went about that particular task. So let's have a look at some of the results there. So as you can see there is quite a bit of variability in how different providers, their success rates in completing this task. If you look at effectiveness of locating course range, we've got Deacon there doing fairly well. As you can see, quite a few providers go well below 50%. That means that more than half of customers were not able to complete this simple task, and we'll look at some examples of why. So overall, 58%. So just under 6 out of 10 customers were able to find the entire course range or a place on the website. As we said, Deacon University is performing fairly well. So just to put this into context and show what's happening here, the best performing university is 75% and the lowest performing is 24%. So if we just pause there and think about less than a quarter for the lowest, less than a quarter of prospective students are able to locate a full list of courses that are offered by that institution. That's quite a low result. We would be expecting that to be a lot higher. And as we said, average is 51%. So what are some of the reasons or obstacles that prospective students encountered? So about 2/3 of them didn't encounter any problems when they completed this task. About 1/3 did. And most common problems were things like navigation, so knowing where to start or finding the right pathway. The other big problem was information was not where they expected it to be, and also there was unclear signposting or the labelling was not correct. So let's have a look at some examples, and I'll show you a couple of examples of universities that scored well on this task and a couple of examples that didn't do as well. So if we start with those that did well, as we said, Deacon performed quite well on this particular task, and let's have a look at why. So you will see here there's a little heat map up at the top that shows us where people were actually clicking. So 86% of Deacon visitors were able to find the full range of courses successfully. And the way that they went about that was 82% clicked on the Find a Course drop-down, and 5% clicked on Find a Course in the search box, and all of those two pathways had 100% success. So the labeling is very clear, and people understand what they're getting when they click on those links. So once they click on the next stage, so there is a search for a course and a browse for a course, and that's quite clearly displayed. And both the people that went to browse for a course and those that went to search for a course were able to find the full range of courses fairly easily. Now that's quite important to enable both those people that have decided what course they want to search for, and those that might still be considering their options or browsing for all the different options. And Deacon does that fairly well, cater for those two scenarios. If we look at another university that's doing well on this particular task, it's University of Melbourne. They actually offer the shortest pathway to their course range. So on average, only 2.2 page views and only 31 seconds to get to the full course range. Satisfaction is the highest for the University of Melbourne on this particular task. If we look at how they went about it, 40% of prospective students went to the study menu, and 35% went to this contextual link, which you can see down here at the bottom, the left. And both of those pathways had 100% success. So again, quite well catered for. And in terms of the evaluation, they had the least problems. Only 15% encountered any sort of problem. So when we look at the next stage, next level down, they do offer a direct link from the homepage. So it's one link to find the success. And again, they cater for both those students that want to browse for courses and those who want to search a specific course. So again, a university that scores quite well on this particular task. Let's look at some universities that don't score so well, and I apologize in advance to those that we're going to be using as examples. We can see it as an opportunity to improve. So let's have a look at one example is Flinders University. Only 30% of Flinders visitors were able to locate the full course range. And the trouble that they had there is knowing where to start. Also, the contextual link to the course information is hidden within the content, and it's not very prominent, and it was actually missed by 80% of visitors. What we also do in this study is we capture some customer verbatim. So you'll see here there's a couple of comments, voice of the customer, VOC, and those comments are often quite indicative of the experience that they're encountering at that time. So here, customers are saying it's difficult to find, it should be under undergraduate study heading. Another customer is saying too much writing on the website makes it hard to find the information I need. So again, this task had quite a low completion rate, and as you can see from the experience, you can sort of see what the pathways are that would make the students struggle to find this information. Another couple of examples of unclear pathways on this particular task. University of New South Wales, my alma mater. Again, no clear link to the courses from the homepage. 33% of customers didn't know where to go. So they didn't even know where to start looking for information when they were on the homepage. Again, some couple of customer comments. Website was very hard to navigate, too hard to navigate, and not enough info. Another example, Curtin University, the link to the courses is a little bit hidden behind the menu, and again missed by 80% of visitors. So just some examples of how a fairly simple task a lot of people struggled with. This is a very messy looking chart, but that's the point. This is an actual click path from this particular task for one of the providers. And as you can see, out of 50 users, 27 had an error, and even those that were successful, as you can see, the pathway is quite long and it's quite wide. which is not what you want to see in a pathway. You would want to see a very short pathway, so people only have to click maybe one or two, and you want to see only a few different options in terms of the pathways that they go through. In this case, it's a wide and elongated pathway, which just indicates that it's not a very good customer experience. So let's move on to the next set of examples. So we've looked at introducing options and one task within that stage. Let's now turn to facilitating decisions and that stage of the customer experience. So if we look at what's happening there, a couple of dimensions that we have in facilitating decisions are around how we support customers if they have questions, and two dimensions that we look at are, one is around general questions and one is around enabling immediate answers. And as you can see there, La Trobe is one of the universities that's doing well. Let's just look at why this is important, and again we'll turn to customers and ask them, what would you do if you encountered a problem on the website? 35% said they would look for frequently asked questions or help. So most people want to self-service if they encounter a problem. Then they would look for contact us or email address. So again, people will want to email, not necessarily phone. And then next option is the online web chat feature. Only 9% would actually look to phone a particular provider. So that's not the preferred option. And interestingly, 11% would simply leave the website and go to another provider. So if there is a problem, if the navigation isn't right, they're just going to go somewhere else. So having said that, the live chat functionality does seem to be important, but it's actually only offered by a couple of universities, La Trobe being one of them. So they make the live chat link available from the landing pages. So it's quick access from all different areas of the site. And the actual live chat window displays the name of the person. You can print the transcripts, you can attach files. It's quite a good functionality. And if you think about how that supports somebody who could be talking maybe to a few different universities and making that decision, if you can actually save those conversations and refer to them later, that makes it a lot easier to actually compare those options for that student. They also list their live chat hours, and that's quite important because customers want to know exactly when that support is available. And obviously there are resourcing constraints for a lot of providers, so the live chat isn't offered 24/7, so it's really important to show when it is offered. Another participant in this study that offered the live chat functionality is Open Uni, and they again make their live chat available from all of the landing and course detail pages. So that's typically where customers will end up, or there's sometimes the exit pages. That's where they may get into questions or issues. So that's a really good functionality, and they make it quite, again, usable and useful by providing the transcripts, and you can save those email conversations. So really good functionality there. And just from other industries, this is fairly widely adopted. So we know that online chat is quite widely used, and this is an example from Medibank, so health insurance industry. So they offer both the online chat as well as callback functionality. So quite prominent up at the top, and also the callback functionality at the bottom is easily accessible. It's in the global navigation menu. So next section that we're going to look at is the postgraduate application. And I should probably just explain here why we look at the postgraduate application. It's because the undergraduate application typically goes through a different process. So we do look at how postgraduate applicants are supported through the process, and there are two elements within the postgraduate application. One is around completing the actual form, and the other one is around the form support, so how well students are supported through the application process. So if we look at completing the form, we've got the pre-online application information, which is what do I need to know, and then we've got the actual form function and content. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference there. And when it comes to the pre-online application information, so setting the customer's expectations, The higher learning industry does not do very well, so the score is quite low, so it's 23% on average. And that's far below what we see in other industries. So let's have a look at some examples there. RMIT is relative to the industry, one of the leading ones, but still relatively low. And the reason why this is important is because customers do rate it quite high. So on a 10-point scale, they rate the ability to apply online at 8.3. So that is quite an important determinant of their decision. If we look at one of the providers that actually has quite good scores in some other areas, Deacon, they're actually in this particular stage of the customer journey actually in last place, so scoring only 5%. And the reason for that is that they provide very little instruction on what information you will need to supply. They provide no time frame or any sort of restrictions, and there is no options for further support. So if I have a problem during the form, I'm left to my own devices. What they do provide is links to information around who is eligible to apply. So that is one positive here. Another provider that's below the industry, which we already know is fairly low itself, is University of Queensland. So scoring only 10% there. So again, little instruction on what students will need to supply, no time restrictions, and no options for further support, or actually mentioning that the process is secure. And we might all think and know that it's secure, but customers still want to see that reassurance that their information will be secure. UNSW actually is an example of who's doing it well in the industry, along with RMIT, and what they're doing well is providing the information on what it is that you need to supply, also telling you how long it's going to take, and also providing the FAQs and who is eligible to apply. So doing all the things that are setting the customer's expectations quite well. You'll note here that they have a contextual link to tips and FAQs that are actually relevant to that particular application. So they score quite well on this stage of the journey. I thought it was worth showing another example from a different industry. So Powershop is from the electricity provider in Victoria, and they provide information when you're looking to switch your electricity very clearly, and they set out how long it's going to take, so 10-minute sign-up, your cooling off period, and how long the switching process will take. And I imagine for students who are applying, they would want similar information around how long it's actually going to take to process their applications, or at least to the next step that's going to be happening in the process. So that's another a couple of examples of who's doing it well and who's not doing it as well. So just given the time, we've got about 5 minutes, just under 5 minutes left. I might summarize the key points, and then we'll see if we can answer a question or two. So in terms of key points that we learned today, so obviously you're aware that we run this study, a syndicated analysis of the digital customer experience across a number of brands in the higher learning industry. And next studies are going to run in April and October of 2015. In terms of the results from our latest study, the key needs that we identified from customers are when they're researching universities online, they're looking for complete and sufficiently detailed information. They want it presented in a context that's easy to navigate and understand, and they want to be able to compare options and apply online. In terms of how the industry is currently serving those needs, most providers are clustered around the average at the sort of high level, but there are significant differences across different stages, as we saw. Even some of those that perform really well at the high level, they have areas that they can improve on. Overall, as an industry, performs relatively on average to other industries. A couple of stages that do quite well. So initial impressions, sort of welcoming prospective customers. The industry does fairly well, but it does fall behind on a couple of other areas, which is mainly facilitating decisions. So things like comparing to other companies, but also the functionality to assist in answering questions immediately. The other area that the industry doesn't do so well on is the postgraduate application. So this includes providing the pre-online application information, but also supporting students through that application process and managing their expectations. And yet we know this is quite important to students. So just to close out, the industry has opportunity to learn from best practice in other industries, and the reason for that is that customers typically, if they encounter a good experience in one industry, they will very quickly come to expect that in all other industries. So they don't really differentiate too much across industries, and so there's really, whoever is doing it well, there's really value in taking those examples and applying it to your industry rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. So with that, I might just quickly check with Darren if we've had any questions that have come through.
Yeah, a question come in a couple of times, which is around, and I probably should have clarified it earlier, but around the competitor set. So university has mentioned that one of my key competitors isn't included at the moment. If I'm involved, how do we get that happening? You can actually have 4 key competitors. So for every client that comes on board, you get to choose obviously yourself, but then your 4 key competitors, and they can be from your same state, interstate, or actually we've even had people nominate overseas companies in some of the other industries we do, like telcos and insurance. So that would be the way we could do it. And Norman, I think we'll just go through to the next one. So that's the questions. In terms of what you saw today, I'll just quickly run through this. I know you've probably got to move on, but today was really just about a high-level industry snapshot, and only gave you a glimpse into the depth and breadth of insight that we can do. So we showed you 3 of the 6 stages, but only really, didn't go too deep into it. In terms of becoming a client, in 2015, for example, you would get the full amount of research, granular analysis at a micro level across all of the all of the 4 methodology or 4 parts of the methodology: customer attitudes, behaviour, best practice audits, as well as our own internal people looking at the audits. As part of the program, we can offer immediate access to the historical data. So what you've seen today, we can look at it from your own perspective and 4 key competitors. The 2015 program, we're looking at April and October measurement, which gets you access to an online portal, which we didn't go into today. We didn't have time, but the portal gives you basically access to all of the measurements and results that are relevant to you and the industry. At the completion of each research period, you get 2 insight, or 1 each, an insight activation workshop, where Norman or one of his team will come and show you the industry findings. Today we were looking at the whole industry, but they'll come and be much more specific to you and your site, your key competitors, but also an overall perspective of the industry as well. And we also offer the option of advisory hours, post-activation workshop, where we can do further investigation into any of the pain points that you want to know more information about before you maybe make a change. So that's probably some of the key points. For any further information, my details are there, 03 9982 3412, or email darren.watson@globalreviews.com. So yeah, please send through any questions or queries that you've got out of today's webinar, and I'd be more than happy to talk in more detail about how we can help. So hopefully you've got a lot out of today. I think you probably did. But yeah, we'll be in touch, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.